Welcome viewers to Hotline with Dookie on IETV and iRadioTT.com live. Today we are dealing with domestic violence and women's shelter in Trinidad and Tobago in particular. It is a topic, a hotly discussed topic. Lately we are seeing in the news many headlines where women are killed, where they are run from their homes. And the more important question is, when this domestic violence exists, why do they continue to return to the home? The term domestic violence emerged in the United States with the rise of the women's power movement in the 1970s. Before that, violence was a matter between partners. It was considered a private matter. There were many educational programs to encourage female victims of intimate partner violence to seek help by calling various hotlines and, if necessary, going to safe houses or shelters. But what drives this emotional distress? Surely it is not something created overnight. Then there's the issue of women who are not attentive to their loved ones and those who create the situation. Let's welcome Ms. Shazelle Brooks, a woman who works with a women's shelter in South Trinidad. Ms. Brooks, welcome to the program Hotline, and thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon, Ms. Dookie. You're welcome. It's great to be here.
Yes, you could just call me Anne for now.
Okay.
You work with a women's shelter in the penal area, I understand. Is that correct?
Well, actually, right now, it's being used as a children's home, but from the period of 2015 to about 2019, 2012 to 2019, we were used as a shelter for abused women and unsupported women with children.
Tell us more about this home. Many women are not even aware that such a home exists or that they can seek help.
Yes, so in particular, our home is a part of a church. It's run by Faith Christian Fellowship Church. So within the penal, Siparia area or those districts, the police would know us. So most of the women who came with us came through the police or came through the church in itself. But in Trinidad, we do have shelters, and a lot of them are NGOs. I believe the government has one, and there are others that operate as NGOs, and they need a lot of help. So I believe a lot of homes are not known. It's not probably well advertised. I've seen one called The Shelter doing a lot of advertisements as well. But homes do exist, and people work very hard to help women in these situations. Women with children, women going through domestic situations, So there are homes that exist, and I've recently found out about the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. That's a group, and if there is a situation that you are in, that would be the group to call to help put you through to shelters. Since 20 until now, I'm dealing with this a lot, but I'm still aware of what's happening.
So if you were to call the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, they will refer you to a home in your area. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, I believe right now there are 5 shelters that are operational. There were more before, but because of lack of finances, lack of support, a lot of them had to close down, right? But also there is
which is sad. That's
800 saved.
I said, Ms. Brooks, that's a very sad thing, yes. It's a sad thing that the government does not include this in their budget.
Well, from what I've heard, there aren't any subventions for shelters at the moment, but I believe they are working on something, so that's yet to be seen. A few homes, they do get some finances through the Ministry of Gender Affairs or Ministry of Social Development, but that isn't straight across the board. So I'm not sure what the regulations are like. I'm not sure what the process is at this particular time. And definitely these NGOs that work for the vulnerable populations, be it women or even men go through abuse as well. But for women with children, even children's home, a lot of us are NGOs that need a lot of help from corporate Trinidad and Tobago and also from the communities.
Yes, I spoke to someone from the Children's Authority a couple months ago, and we found that yes, they need a lot of support, and there are many children homes that exist that people are not aware of. And you rightfully mentioned men. Men are victims of abuse as well.
Yes.
Have you come across, in your experience, have you come across men who have been abused?
Still today, people call me with regards to finding residents or a safe place for persons in domestic situations, and I've had a few calls for men as well, but I haven't personally dealt with it while our home existed, and our home was specifically for women. So we do find lacking in our country spaces available to even support men in these situations, and it's a much more trickier subject even for men coming forward and all of that. But I do believe in one of the government homes right now that's opened is for women, and there is one to be opened that will be catered for men. I'm familiar, and I liaise with the president of the Single Fathers Association, and this is something that he advocates for as well a lot. There are a lot of cases with men being abused as well.
Why would men be more afraid or ashamed to come forward and say that they need help?
Well, a man getting licked, by his woman.
They would be branded. They would be branded, yes.
But I'm not familiar in this topic, but that's a very interesting topic, a very interesting conversation to have as well.
That's a whole conversation.
Yeah, that will take up your whole show, the case against women, I don't think one is more important than the other. One may be more prevalent than the other, or we know about it from ever since. I don't know what the statistics are for men versus women in Trinidad and Tobago, and then also how many men are coming out to express themselves and what is happening. Can you imagine you going to the police, and the truth about it is a lot of people are afraid to go to the police. So can you imagine as a man going to tell the police your wife beaten you, or you're afraid to go home? So a lot of things happen. Even for women, a lot of women are afraid to go to the police stations. So typically, if somebody calls me now, I would suggest to them that they need to make a report to the community police, because for our home, we needed to get a letter from the police or a police report, because a lot of these ladies would have been in hiding, right? And they would have made the decision to leave, and they're afraid, and persons didn't know where they are. So we tried our best to kind of provide for them and care for them. But there's a lot more to it. And sometimes people have friends in the police station, So I'm not saying that it's like that everywhere. I know the police really tried. The one that we worked with, they tried. They still call us. They still ask for help a lot. They try their best. But a lot of people do not have that experience. I know about 2 or 3 persons do not have that experience at all. So many persons are afraid. So what I believe is the best thing right now to do is to call the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the 800 SAVE. That's the number to call. They would be the ones to guide you to the process of how to get into a shelter in Trinidad and Tobago. And I believe that is Families in Action running it for the Ministry of Gender Affairs.
That's 800 SAVE. SAVE.
800 SAVE.
Yes.
And the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, their number is 624 0402.
624, repeat that again.
624 0402.
0402. Just to share with our viewers, Ms. Brooks, some data I have from the branch from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, CAPA, revealed that there were approximately 11,441 reports leading to domestic violence between 2010 and 2015. Interesting enough, approximately 75% of these reports were related to female individuals. During the same period, there were 131 domestic violence related deaths. 56% of these deaths were females. So it meant that males were also being killed because of domestic violence. What are your comments?
Yes, that sounds staggering.
Yes.
This is a problem for us in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think we can pretend it's not an issue. And I really believe that our family structure and our community is really falling apart. What I have observed is that there are a lot of people who have gone through domestic violence, who have gone through sexual abuse, and those things have not been dealt with. It's not been reported, and it kind of carries across to their other relationships. So if this happened when you were a child, you're accustomed to your parents being like this becomes your sense of value, and you carry it across to your marriage, and you expect that this is the norm. And these things are having severe impacts on children, severe impacts on husbands, wives, and it's something that we really need to deal with as a nation, because we are seeing it getting worse and worse. We're not seeing an improvement here. And I know there are groups, I know there are efforts. I can't give you the statistics, but I know that it's something that we are looking at, and I hope that those who are in charge would really get the support that they need from the other agencies, as well as for us not to condone these things. Many times women go through these things and their families expect them to stay. They have many different reasons why they stay in these relationships. They are afraid to leave. They don't have any support. They don't know where to go. They want to stay for their children. People need proper counsel. They need proper support. And they cannot do it alone, because their whole mentality has changed. A lot of them, their self-worth has been undermined. And they do not feel they have the ability to leave. So when you see someone come to a shelter, they've made that step. But it's a whole different process of, how do I move on? I've seen persons come to us and make progress, and they are in hiding. Police have brought them, and then they decide to meet their husband or their boyfriend or their children's father for money, for sex. It's not easy to let go, and we can't fault these women because they need more. What we did is we tried to provide counseling through the church as well as through a clinical psychologist. Many times people don't want to go for help. You can't force persons to do things. So people need a lot of support. It's a lot of patience. Many times, the biggest takeaway that I received in that while working there, as much as you are heartbroken in all of these situations, people want change, but they don't want to do the work to change, because it really starts with you. Making that solid decision. That first step is great, but then the work begins, the healing begins, the accountability, the responsibility, breaking the patterns that lead us to those type of relationships. Those things is things that personal accountability is needed for, and you need a level of support as well.
Ms. Brooks, did you have cases during your term in working with women who come to the shelter and they return to the family home? They return again to the shelter and they go back and forth. Why do they keep returning to the home?
A lot of times they are attached, and yes, we've had cases like that where it was serious police interaction. Every time the resident who stayed with us had to leave the home, police would escort them. Children have to go to school, police would escort them, and then next thing you know, the resident is seen in a public place with the person that they're running away from their husband or their baby's daddies. And really it's just attachments. It's a strong attachment. This person they remember the good times, they start missing them, they need money to do things, they've been dependent on this person. So while there's fear for the abuse, there's attachments as well. And that, as I'm saying, it takes a lot of time and a lot of personal responsibility and accountability and support to help persons move past that. One of the things that I've experienced is as we tried to help persons, they would have felt as though we were keeping them back, or we were trying to rule their lives, and they would have left our place on their own because they felt as though they were being controlled. And we had some rules, but nothing too drastic, meaning to say we had house rules. You return to the home at this time, this is not allowed. We are a Christian home, so upon coming, you had to decide if you were okay with attending one service, and nothing was forced on anyone. The whole aim under the church was to try to help these women as much as possible. Clothing, food, and we've had experience with some women who worked very hard. They worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs to try to make it on their own to leave. Very, very admirable. But in the end, it came back down to breaking those patterns, breaking those cycles, healing, for themselves, for their children, to be able to really move on in a better state. Because a lot of times people leave as well, but they have that victim mentality. They've been abused for so long. Some persons have been abused since a child, even by their parents. So they go into this thinking this is normal, this is what it looks like. So each situation is very different. People respond to things differently. We've seen women really, really try and receive the help that was offered, or even go on their own to try to do that for the sake of their children, and we've seen some very successful cases as well.
Some of them may have been abused by their stepfathers and so on, and they continue to, they bring it out in their marriage. It shows up.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know what's really sad? In present time, as we're dealing with children's homes, it's no longer stepdaddies, It's no longer uncles and cousins, It's mothers and fathers. That's a very alarming and scary fact in Trinidad and Tobago.
And even siblings.
Even siblings, yes. So think about this, right? This has happened to you by somebody who's your blood relative, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, and then you are going to a new place. How does your mind come to understand pure relationships? When these pure relationships, when love is equated to sex, so importance is equated to control and jealousy. It's a whole mind shift. It's a whole mindset that you really have to overcome and heal from.
You crush that child's mind.
You pervert it. They've lost their innocence. How they go on in life looking at things from a normal perspective. And it's not a simple explanation, it's inner work.
Tell us some more before we go on a break. Tell us about the home in particular you deal with, if you're willing to share the name of the home and its location, and what are some of your house rules?
Okay, great. Well, the name of our home is Adonna Institution for Orphans. It was the same name we operated under the women's shelter. And the reason for that was because while we opened up in 2012, we had a lot of red tape concerning the new highway project. So rather than it being a very dormant building, we decided to operate as a shelter for women with children. The church was already accustomed doing that. So in 2021, we got our official license to operate as a children's home. Right now in Trinidad and Tobago, the laws of the lands have changed. There's a lot of proclamations that have been made for children's homes. So it's not like before, where anybody could just take in children or not. So all the children that we have in care come from Children's Authority. We report to Children's Authority. And a lot of things have changed in terms of what we may have been accustomed doing. We can't just go to children's home, visit the children, play with them, feed them. There's a lot of rules, no pictures, no interactions with the public. We don't receive cooked foods from the public, but you can bring us food items from established food places. Our home in particular, we have two groups of siblings. We have 6 children. In between, we get 1 or 2 that end up going back to their families, which is great news. But presently, we have 6 children. And we're currently probably awaiting 3 more. Probably within this week, we'll find out if we'll get 3 more children. We are located in...
What about women? Do you have any...
We no longer... No, we cannot do the boats. There are, as far as I know, there are no regulations for women shelters at the moment. But with children's home, it needs to be a very separate building. So it's not open to the public, and we could not do the boat at the same time. We were hoping to do that, but we had to choose which one we were going to focus on. And our building was initially earmarked or built specifically for a children's home.
Okay.
The land was donated by children's home, and we honored that.
Let's take a short commercial break, and when we come back, I want to deal specifically with what causes social breakdown in society. We'll be right back, viewers. Investigative journalism builds communities. Welcome to Hotline with Dookie on ITV every Monday live at 1 to 2 p.m. Challenges facing the nation. The economic outlook when wages are not rising as high as food prices. Will we be making a softer economic landing? Some experts are cautiously optimistic now. Health, job security, education, social imbalance, and the security of our nation all comes to mind. Experience all of this and more just ahead on Hotline with Dookie on IETV.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back, viewers, to this program. We are dealing specifically with domestic violence and all aspects of it. How many more must die? How many more must suffer? What causes this breakdown in society? Ms. Brooks, welcome back to the program Hotline.
Thank you, Anne.
Shazelle?
Yes,
Yes,
are you hearing me?
I said welcome back to Hotline.
Thank you so much, Anne.
I was asking before we went on the break, this breakdown we have in society, what do you think leads to it?
Well, I really believe it's more a change in family, a breakdown in family values. While times have changed and we're living in new societies, the fact that we have a lot of hurting people in marriages, people have not healed. And as mentioned before, they're just carrying these things over into their relationships. But there's a lot of healing to be done. What people think it's normal.
You're saying
it's not
there's
normal.
Emotional abuse from the past that they bring over.
Emotional, sexual, there's a lot of abuse. So these things, persons may not have the capacity within themselves to understand these things. And some people do. And I just believe that it starts with us first. There's many things we cannot manage with persons around us. We can't control other people, but I believe that that breakdown in the family system and values is really, really affecting overall life.
We have a lot of churches, mosques, and temples who assist in this breakdown, and they support family shelters and so on. And you were speaking about the shelter that you supported. The Ministry of Social Development, should they be doing more to highlight this out there?
Yes, I think all bodies should be doing more, but it's not always about finances. It's not always about those things. It's about being able to have, like, we have a lot of social workers. We use a lot of the free resources for our home, for our shelters, and most of the times what you find that people are overworked. The amount of cases that you have to the amount of social workers, even at children's homes, the amount of issues that we have to the amount of social workers, it's lacking. So besides, and I think that's just the plaster. That's a plaster. I think we have to get to the root of the issue and what is dealing with more research specifically for Trinidad and Tobago and understanding what is causing these issues in our country and dealing with it. As you mentioned, the religious organizations tackle it hands-on as we support families, as we talk about family life and all of those things. But persons, not everybody may come into that, so we definitely need to have a lot more awareness, a lot more understanding and knowledge. I think breaking patterns is very important. You have a lot of angry people, a lot of persons who were raised by their grandmothers, their old grandmothers, still the case. A lot of young people having children not supported by their parents. Those things create a lot of emotional distress and wrong perspectives on life, and then you meet somebody else, where sometimes abuse is normal. As I'm saying, a lot of times culturally things are very normal, or you don't talk about it, or this is just the way it is, So we have to have a lot of education and awareness in terms of, about violence. Not just violence to women, violence to men. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with this in our families? What are the avenues we can go for help? But how can I myself deal with this as a person? What should I do? I think people need a lot of guidance and counseling in those areas. And they need ways forward to heal so that even when they step out of these relationships, they're not going to end up back in another relationship. And that's what I see at my level happening all the time.
In the case of long-term domestic violence or abuse, which results in battered woman syndrome, or sometimes called battered person syndrome, the psychologists, they have find these people, they get angry or frustrated very easily. They often feel defensive. Have you come in contact with persons like this?
Definitely. I don't think they had anyone.
They tend to view themselves negatively.
Yes, the whole mentality, the whole disposition of somebody who's gone through a lot of abuse. It's angry, it's frustrated, it's answers that they need. They have been stripped of their self-confidence, they've been stripped of their self-worth, so it's very aggressive. As I said, even when we try to help them, many times that help is met with, you're trying to control me, they're not willing to do certain things, and those things takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. Even with children that we deal with, they are very angry, very rejected. That's a long work in progress, and it's a matter of really getting the help and being open as you learn new things, breaking those patterns, learning how to set boundaries, learning how to be accountable to yourself. People's personal standards are different, and everybody has religious values that might be similar to mine. There's certain things that go straight across the board, whether you are Hindu, Muslim, Christian, that we all live by. But persons have to also be willing to make this step of not just leaving the relationship, but now doing the work to protect myself. And there are some cases that extreme husbands follow you. That's why in our home, a lot of women were in hiding. We're a little bit out of the way, out of the area, so many people when they pass be like, we never knew you guys were open, we didn't know this was functional, and that's very intentional.
I am because guilty of that. I did not even know there was a women's home in the Penal area.
Yes, I believe because of how we opened up really sort of unintentionally, because the aim was to open the children's home first, and we got so much red tape on that. And as I mentioned, we didn't want it to be a dormant space because the place is beautiful with newly constructed. So our bishop would have liked us to serve our community. And they would have been doing something like that before I came along as well. So we continued in that motion, and
Are
we
these
really did.
homes, Ms. Brooks, are these homes, are they protected by the police? Do the police visit it regular?
Yes, so when we operated as a shelter for women, they did come along very often.
So back to the
Depends on the
women,
safety of residents.
back to the women who are in these shelters. Some of them, they aren't good at making decisions for themselves. Some of them tend to want to be a people pleaser. How do you get them to minimize this toxic moment?
I can tell you from my experience, we tried our best to have counselors. We had a clinical counselor. Whatever support they would have needed, we would have tried to give them that. But you see that you have to make an effort for yourself. In my experience, there was a lot of resistance for that. Persons just sort of wanted to remain the same, just got away from the situation. They're trying to take care of themselves, take care of their children the best that they could. But being able to change those patterns, being able to grow or learn from it. A lot of them were just stuck in that moment of being very frustrated. I've had situations where the level of abuse is unimaginable. I really can't get into it, but it's very unimaginable. You yourself can't think about something like this, imagine this level of abuse. So those things are very hard, and while we might be talking to them and praying for them and praying with them, there is that psychological help that they do need. There is that support that they do need. And I don't know what the other shelters are doing. I know the Coalition for Domestic Violence, they mentioned to me that they have a social worker there as well. But many times persons do not want to receive that help. So the most you could do is just help them as much as they're willing to be helped. As what I've mentioned, in our case, we've had ladies who would have left our homes, and gone back to the situation, or left their homes to go and try to make it on their own, because they didn't want to be accountable for some of the decisions that they were making that were not only harmful to themselves, but to their children. So if you question them, when you ask them, they feel like you have no right to talk to me about that in my life. But in a case where you have a shelter, where you have multiple women and children in hiding, when you make a bad move, it could affect everybody in care. One lady had to be removed from our care and her children because her location was compromised. So helping persons also requires that decision to help myself. And that's very hard to do. And that needs a lot of...
Yes, the individual themselves, they have to want the help.
Yes.
They often feel defensive. They tend to view themselves negatively.
It's really bad. They sometimes it's violence is not, or domestic violence is not even about a certain type of woman, or sometimes you find very educated women, very women, career women, and they don't come forward because they feel ashamed. How could this happen to me? So it really doesn't have any status or any boundaries or who it could happen to, and what you find always is that their self-worth and their self-confidence is undermined, is diminished. So it's a whole process of knowing who you are and discovering who you are, and building back that self-esteem, building back that self-worth before they can make strong decisions for their future.
Some of these homes, they are not widely advertised, as we mentioned earlier. How would people what would you say that they should do to make people more aware that it exists, that there's help out there, that they can reach out and get help?
I'm giving my opinion on this, right? Many times homes probably don't advertise is because they're a safe space, they are in hiding, and it's the first place that people would probably check outside of relatives and friends. So I do believe that's one of the issues for us. That's something we have to consider, and that's why we like kind of being a little bit unknown. But people knew of us within our community, the work that we did. So the police knew of us. The major service providers, community providers, agencies would have known about us. So that is how we would have received the woman. However, what I think can happen right now is that you can call 800 SAVE or the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I think those are the two main places to know their numbers, know their contacts, and call them. They will be able to advise, they will be able to help.
What role do drugs and alcohol play in this violent and abusive relationship that people experience? From your experience?
Yes, from my experience, what I would have seen is the perpetrators, the husbands, they were alcoholics. Some of the women, we didn't have a lot of addiction with the women. Some of them probably with smoking, but a lot of them, they were running away from husbands who were severe alcoholics. And so if I had to just give a situation out of the 10 to 12 women who stayed with us, almost every single situation had to do with a partner who was an alcoholic.
Over the years, have you find that have been increasing? And age bracket. Is it older women or younger women?
The women who came to us were between 22 to 40 years old. And since we are no longer operating as a shelter, I can't say I don't really have a lot of experience further than that outside of what I'm doing now with the children's home.
And from your experience, would you say one race suffer more than the other, or is it evened out?
No, we had a mix. It wasn't about race at all. From the residents that came to us, it was mixed.
So battered woman syndrome, or BWS as they say, it is among every creed and race.
Yes, from our home, yes, we would have seen that.
What effect this has on the children of the home?
When we operated, the woman came in with their children, right? And the children were comfortable with us, but you could always see behavioral issues. You know, with us, we actually had more boys in our care than girls over the years. So we had about 10 women and 25 children. We probably had 19 boys who were in care with us. And you would see the behavioral issues with the boys. You would see the anger. The mothers loved them, did their best for their children. I didn't have any cases while I was there where mothers didn't show love or try their best to provide for the kids. And we ourselves would have tried our best to give them all that they needed for school, for food, for clothing. But we definitely saw anger issues and definitely saw a lot of defiance, but that anger is there.
You have noticed over the past couple of weeks there have been an increase in domestic violence, which led to murders.
Yes, there's a lot of, since I think last year, the year before, we had a lot of cases in deaths in our country. It's very alarming. It seemed like it was happening every week.
Yeah, it was taking over the headlines in the newspaper more than the politics. Very sad though.
Definitely.
Yes. What role the children authority should play in this?
With regards to domestic violence, as far as I know, with the calls that I receive almost every day, we are called every day to receive children. You know, this is not a very simple situation for many cases. The Children's Authority, they are really hoping that families will be the first ones to take in children that need to be removed from care. And even the removal from care is a very traumatic experience for a child growing up with their families. No matter what children go through with their families, they always look up to mommy and daddy. Even if when they come into our care and they don't ever want to talk to mommy, don't ever want to talk to daddy, at some point in time they start missing mommy and daddy and wanting them. And just an interesting point.
Ms. Brooks, before you continue, let's take a short commercial break, and when we come back, this is a very important and it is a detailed issue, what effect it has on children when they stay in abusive homes. In the final part of the program, we'll be discussing that when we come back. Investigative journalism builds communities. Welcome to Hotline with Dookie on ITV every Monday live at 1 to 2 p.m. Challenges facing the nation. The economic outlook when wages are not rising as high as food prices. Will we be making a softer economic landing? Some experts are cautiously optimistic now. Health, job security, education, social imbalance, and the security of our nation all comes to mind. Experience all of this and more just ahead on Hotline with Dookie on ITV. Welcome back, viewers. We were discussing before the break with Miss Shazelle Brooks how children are affected and how it affects them. And Miss Brooks, continue the point you were telling us about children and when they don't want to return to mommy and daddy.
Well, a lot of
What
times,
happens to these children after that?
Once they're coming into care at a children's home, it's very traumatic for them. They don't want to come because they want their parents, regardless of how bad that situation is. Over time, they might say they don't want to talk to mommy, they don't want to talk to daddy, but at some point in time, even under the most severe circumstances, children, in their innocence, how they are, they want their parents. And it's very interesting to know that in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have a lot of orphans, but we have a lot of children who are removed from care, from their parents' care or their family care, because of neglect, because of sexual abuse, because of physical abuse.
So they are removed by force, by the law.
They are removed, yes, because they are in danger. They are being abused. They are being neglected. They're not being cared for well. They are vulnerable and in very dire circumstances. So usually you find children's authorities stepping into situations like that to remove children and to also find placements for them. One of their main focus is to first find probably a family member who could take in children, and then they probably would go to the children residences. Orphanages, as we know it, are now called community residences or children's residences. So they would look for placement in children's homes. And I don't believe we have enough placements in the country for the amount of children that are being removed from care, which is a very scary thing as well. It's a very scary thing. So
we don't have enough.
We don't have enough. And while the solution is to build more, the point is we really shouldn't be building more. We should be dealing with the issues that are affecting families, affecting them. Again, it comes back down to this. You find a child is being raped, a child is being molested. Somebody was molested, one of these parents was molested, they never healed from it, they got that. There's a lot of abuse in a home. Daddy was beaten when he was a child, so now it's happening to the children. So I've had a very interesting experience to see it go backwards, where I've seen women who coming out of domestic violence situations, and I'm now having children that are removed from domestic violence situations and other situations. And I see this similarity in their mentality. It's that victim mentality. It's hard to make decisions. We have children who are angry, they're rejected, their parents are alive. They don't understand why they're in a home, even though they know they were being abused, even though that was not right. They want to be with their parents. It's a lot of behavioral issues, a lot of defiance, a lot of anger, a lot of rage, and we see one side of things on the news about children's home, and definitely where there is abuse towards children and homosexual abuse, that's wrong. But the other side of it, our caregivers, we have to protect them as well. There's daily outbursts, there's situations that the caregivers are given into, and we have to understand and we have to have these children overcome these things so that when they reach 18 years old and they don't have a choice but to leave our home, they can be normal, well-adjusted, healed citizens making a contribution. The children we have are so lovely, they're so wonderful. You would not believe how sweet they are, but the hurt and the rejection that they feel, it really, really hurts them. And we see how it affects their behavior, how it affects their self-esteem, how it affects their worth. You can give them everything, the best of everything. They're still going to have that hole inside of them. Some of them are too young to articulate it, but we understand what's happening.
Is that why we have probably so many rejected youths out there in society?
Definitely. I mean, we are taking in children from their homes that have been removed from their homes into our care. And when we place our children into schools, sometimes they come back, they're in a lot of fights, they're in a lot of other situations. How many children need to be removed or in situations that would be considered valid for removal that are still living in those situations every day? So we have the ones in care that we know about and we can report on. But how many more children are out there that are being abused, that are being neglected, that have nobody to defend them, that they have nowhere to turn to, and they have to deal with this on their own?
How many of them out there are too scared to talk?
Too scared to talk. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know who will believe them. They've been told if you tell, this will happen to you.
After these children leave the home when they are 18, what happens to them?
Well, the process is that we would begin to look along with Children's Authority if they have families that can take them in. But basically, we have to prepare them for a life on their own. This year, they did a lot of research with children's homes to look at what can be put in place for children after 18 years old because they have to leave. There are some transition homes in the country, but I don't think it's going to be enough for all the children that have to leave at the same time. As far as we are concerned at Adonai Institution for Orphans and our church, our head church, Faith Christian Fellowship Church, we are hoping to build transition homes to facilitate our children. They cannot reside when they are 18 on the same compound with the children in care under 18. So it has to be a separate building, a separate facility. But we have to help prepare them to be independent when they are 18 years old.
Do you prepare them by helping them find jobs, employment, and to support themselves?
At this time, we do not have children near that age, but that would be the plan. Through skills, through development of their talents, also helping them with jobs. We would like to continue to have them if it is they want to go to university, if they would want to continue with school after 18. This is our heart's desire to be able to support them even after they leave. But there is some conflict of interest in terms of the law and staying in contact with the children. So we are working around these issues. We have about 5 more years. Our eldest he's 14. And when he's going to be 18, he will still be in Form 5, haven't written CXC, and we know if we leave him by himself, he probably wouldn't want to continue. So we have to take all of these things into consideration as we help prepare these children to face their future. A lot of them may want to go visit their parents, look for their families. Some of them don't, at least right now, that's what they say. But we don't know. The time will tell as they get older, as they heal, as they mature.
Perhaps it is a good opportunity for some of these trade programs that the government have and that they boast about to introduce it to the children's home.
Well, they do. They usually send us information on the trade schools and the opportunities that exist. So they do share those information with us.
Like I heard from the minister, is it social development or the MP for Labre yesterday speaking about how there would be 1,500 more youth farmers, which is a good thing. Perhaps some of this could, it could trickle down to these homes where children are coming out in society and they don't know where to turn. It's a good opportunity for them to be assisted in earning a living.
Definitely.
Yes. When these children are in school and they are in the children's home, how does that process operate? How you all monitor them?
So we have 6 children in care right now. We had 7 at one point in time. So obviously we would let the teachers, the principal, know about these children that they are living at a children's residence. And most of the times we try to keep this private because children, they can be mean, and a lot of these children who are in our care, they don't want persons to know where they are living.
Yes, I was just about to ask you that if the other children give them a hard time because they are in
Yes, they do. Some of them, not all of them, but children have a way they can be very mean, so
they don't want it to come out, they want it to remain a secret.
Yes, because remember, they are not, and then they're not orphans, their parents are alive. That's a long conversation. That's a difficult conversation for a child to have to explain and justify. You know what I mean? So most of the times we try to keep it very private in that case. And because schools have been open, teachers, some teachers and principals have gone out of their way to really support us. I can speak about my home, right? We are really thankful for the principals that have helped our children, the teachers that go out to support our children. It's been very tremendous. A lot of them have made personal investments in these children that we are so thankful for. So we have been in a position where we have really had support. And we do have children in school that have fights every day. They call us every day to tell us about it. Sometimes we have to go pick them up early. Sometimes the teachers, the principals get involved and try to manage the situation. And they have been very supportive, knowing the background of the children coming from a children's home. But there are issues.
Repeat the name of the home that you work with.
It's Adonna Institution for Orphans. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram as Adonna House. And we are located in San Francisco, in Pinal. And I can give you some numbers if you need to reach out to us.
Yeah, sure.
Our landline is 228-2102. And you can call 766-5547.
Sure.
We really need support from our communities, from corporate, from public, in terms of groceries, financial support, whatever you need from us, whatever information you require for us. We are fully licensed, so we are licensed. So we are legally operating.
What are some of the hopes and dreams, or where you hope to see that this effort will take you in the future?
Working in the women's shelter and transitioning into the children's home, it has really opened up my eyes to how much women and children, and I would just focus on that because that's my experience. I know men are going through it too, have been going through. And then working from the children's home side and seeing all the things that the public will never know that workers go through, staff go through. I would really like to see more education, specific education that we need for caregivers, because it is not easy. It's not easy at all being a caregiver. So we did a program with the University of West Indies alongside Gender and Child Affairs, I believe it was, or the Office of the Prime Minister last year. Managers did it and some of the staff did it. And I believe those things need to be done in diplomas or degrees specifically for staff working in childcare, because geriatric and childcare, those type of qualifications, which I would have done as well, is not sufficient for the type of situations we are dealing with at children's home, with behavioral disorders, with regulation of emotions. It's a lot and it's very serious. So that's one thing. The other thing I would like to see happen is that when children are removed from homes, remember they have their families and they are longing to go back to families. I would like to see specific units, specific departments that work with those families so that they could truly be reintegrated, if that is important, because people, not just children, they need their family, they need their support. They want to know that, hey, mommy and daddy love me. They want to know, hey, mommy and daddy could still be there for me. They long for their parents. And many times it may not work out because people may not be willing to make the effort. But I would like to know that there are persons that are working with the parents of these children to know that when they're 18 years old, if they could go back there. Because many times, if it is, those things are not working out, the first place these children are going to go to is their parents. Angry as they are with their parents, they're going to go look for them. And then that could open up a new can of worms for them, And I would really think as well that the education for the laws of the land for children will be more spread, and I want to see more assistance from corporate Trinidad and Tobago. I know there's a million things to support, but the children are our future. Tomorrow they could be our presidents, our prime ministers, so they could be the ones that enter your homes to rob you and kill you. right? So we need to pay attention to this. I know it sounds very cliche, but it's the reality of it. We need them to make strong decisions. We need them to be whole. We need to put the things that we are missing in right now. If we can't do it today, make sure we think about it in the next 10 years. We have very strong strategic plans for the children, what we are dealing with, not the idealistic thing. You know, we need to look at Trinidad and Tobago, what is happening right now, why these things are happening, and tackle it hands on. Tackle it hands on. Put enough money behind it. We have a lot of people that are passionate and advocating these things. They need to be supported financially. They need to be supported with the right staff. They need a lot of support.
Not only the
So I'm making an
churches,
appeal to all children
temples.
home in your area. Be sure to reach out. And we would love your help, but if there's one near you, please reach out to them and help them.
I'm saying not only the churches, the temples and the mosque, the religious organization should be reaching out, but as you mentioned, rightly so, corporate Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
Yes. When I mentioned earlier, Ms. Brooks, that recently we have seen many headlines where there were cases of domestic violence and where the woman was killed in the situation and the children abused. How do you feel when you see that? Do you say, well, that is another one that I could have saved?
No, I don't feel very early in my I was there for like 5 years working with the woman at the home, and I felt so personally responsible for them. And literally, the emotional and the physical energy that took, I didn't even have time for myself. I'm still learning how to do that. But I had to understand while I am doing this, I personally cannot save people, right? When I see these things, my heart breaks. It is heartbreaking. I'm never over it. You know, sometimes you can become desensitized, but I'm never over it. This is very painful to see this situation. And my whole thing is, how can we fix this? You know, it's not a cookie cutter situation. We have to find the root of these things, whether it's cultural, whether people need um, to go talk to a counselor, they need some psychological support. The churches, the religious organizations are doing their best. I'm coming from one. I know what we do. I know what other religious homes are doing. They share with us, many persons reach out to us who are not Christians, and they support us very well. You know, but I think as a nation, as a society, we need to be looking at our problems and really tackling these things, as I say, with enough money, with enough resources, very, very consciously, very, very intentionally. And I know there's a lot of different things, but we need to be reaching out into the communities. We need to be talking to persons that are needing help. Many people are afraid. They don't know who to talk to. They have no support. They're being advised and they may not be getting the right advice. You know, why to stay, what to do. What about a woman who wants to leave and her husband is obsessive and following her? I won't let her go, won't let her move on. She's ready to do that. You know, we have so much situations, and we need to be looking at what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago and trying to deal with those things very specifically.
Of course. So, women out there, you have to, if you are a victim of domestic violence or abuse, find a shelter or find a program near you. The Donna House, as Ms. Brooks mentioned, their number 228-2102 or 766-5547. There's also 800 SAVE and 6244-204 Violent Coalition for Violence against Domestic Violence. Ms. Brooks, thank you so much for joining us. A strong woman stands up for herself. A stronger woman stands up for everybody else. Maya Angelou. I am Ann Dookie. Thank you for watching.